orthomarketing.com. 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.
Well, hello, everybody in podcast land. This is Dean Steinman, President of Ortho Marketing, and we are back with another podcast for you. And I am very, very excited to have a very special guest with us today. We have Dr. Leslie Pitner, an orthodontist in beautiful South Carolina. And she's here to talk a little bit about her practice, her journey, and to just give you guys a little bit of education on what's going on in the orthodontic industry and world. So, hello, Dr. Pitner. How are you today?
Hey, Dean. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad you're joining me. Thank you so much. So, tell us a little bit about Leslie Pitner. So you're an orthodontist in South Carolina. Where are you originally from? And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I am originally from Columbia, South Carolina, and had a little bit of an unusual journey to orthodontics. My father was an orthodontist, and that made me think that was never what I wanted to do. And because I thought putting my hands in people's mouths was completely disgusting. And I actually studied art history and as an undergraduate, and then went into a PhD program in art history, thinking I was going to be a professor. And along the way, I discovered that I really didn't want to write papers that about 10 people would read and all would want to argue with me why I was wrong. And started to think I want to do something a little more practical, hands-on. And at that point, started to realize that what my dad's job was pretty cool because it integrated the aesthetic part that I enjoyed in art history, and it was something practical that I could do for people and work for myself. So that was, then I made the transition, and I didn't start dental school until I was 29, and went to dental school, then when I finished my residency, went in practice with my dad, and then we were able to practice together for 5 years. Then he retired, and so now I've been about 10 years by myself.
Oh, great. And what do you like best about being an orthodontist?
The very best, I always tell people the very best part are the people. There's also the worst part many days, but just meeting people, I get to hold the whole range of people that I get to interact with and meet, and just knowing that I'm doing something very concrete that people appreciate. I tell patients, I've never had anyone say they wished they came back and say, "Man, I'm really sorry that I got my teeth straight."
Right.
It's kind of an unqualified good, so you feel good about that.
It's interesting. Unless I work with a lot of orthodontists, as you know, and you're one of our clients, and we're happy to have you work with us. And I always like to say that we're both in the smile business. My job is to make you smile by getting you more patients and make your practice successful, and your job is to make people smile. And you're a game changer. You make people's life better. I always, it's funny if, being in New York, you walk down this in Manhattan, you walk in New York City, and you could just, if somebody has a good smile, they feel better about themselves. They walk better, they walk happier. They're, you just feel better about that person. You don't even know who they are, a complete stranger, but when somebody has a good smile, you just know that they're feeling better about themselves. And that's, what's great. What you do is you change people's lives, and that's why I love working with orthodontists, because you guys are just, you're doing the good thing,
It is fun. And the really fun part, I actually treat a lot of adults. My practice is about 50% adults. And I think the adult transformations are the most satisfying, because I can think of, some people, one adult, he had an underbite. He looked like a bulldog. He looked bad. And just after we were able to treat him, his personality completely transformed. It was probably one of the most spectacular changes I'd seen. And it's just like, wow. And even I ran into him a few years later, and his wife came up to me and hugged me. She's like, that was, he just was a different person after that. And that's when you go, okay, that's why you put up with the bad days.
Right. Exactly. Like and it's funny, so I started my Invisalign journey as well as an adult. I never had braces as a kid, and so Dr. Glazer, is doing this for me, and so we were talking, and I was asking, what's it like working with adults versus kids? Are adults more compliant? Do they get on board easier? I thought adults would be easier and they would be more, able to adapt. And he said the opposite. How does it work for you? Do you feel that adults are more compliant, or is it kids are more compliant for you
Yeah.
if they
It's
follow the
a,
right steps?
it, it's funny. Adults sometimes are worse. You would never think this. Like you chose this for yourself and you're paying
Hmm.
for it, but people can lie to themselves and lie to me.
Right.
Uh, so they both have their own challenges, but sometimes kids are way more compliant, and also I find that kids are at least teenagers. They don't lie to you as much. They'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm not doing this," whereas adult will just lie straight to your
Sure.
face because they're embarrassed.
Sure, and they say, "Yeah, I'm changing my liners," and they're not because you can look right away and see, so
Right.
it's, so it's funny. So let's talk a little about your practice. So you have 3 offices, all right? So what
Yes.
made you go from, to have, it's unique for, a lot of our clients have, 1, 2, but not many have 3 or more practices. So what locations? So what made you expand or, take on this type of challenge?
Probably a little bit of insanity. Um, I when I went into practice, as I said, I started practicing with my father, and we always had two locations, and he'd had a satellite office from very early in his practice, and and then we opened a new location when we were working together and closed another that was farther out and it wasn't as good a location. So then we had two,
Mhm.
and so I was used to that. That was to me normal. And in South Carolina, we don't have a huge population density. So, you kind of have to have most people have multiple locations because patients don't want to be driving a long way. It's probably, some
Sure.
of the,
Okay.
there's things are changing now with technology,
Hmm.
but when you had to see people every 6 weeks, you didn't want to go a long way. But
Right.
then the office that I most recently opened, that I opened when I was after my father retired, what is an office that is in downtown Columbia, and it is an office that I exclusively treat adults. And that was kind of
Really
a
interesting.
yeah, it was
Okay.
that was something I was really passionate about. I realized after I got, been practicing about 10 years that I really enjoy treating adults. And I know a lot of other orthodontists don't. And so I
Hmm.
kind of saw that was a niche that I had, and I wanted to have a place that adults could feel comfortable. A lot of folks do not want to come in an office and be with a bunch of 12-year-olds. They
Right.
feel, it makes them feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. And I wanted a location that was convenient. So it was kind of, that was the impetus for opening a third office. So it's probably a little nuts, but it's fun. I mean, it's a lot of work for my staff to make sure that everything gets to where we need to go. For me, it's not as much work. I show up and they make the magic happen. And the fun part is that, if you have a bad day, the next day is going to be completely different because I
Right.
have each location, the patient population is different. So I'm never bored, and I have a short attention span, so I know that each day of the week is going to be completely different.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's thinking of opening up multiple locations?
Well, my first advice would be sure you need to do it.
All
I
right.
mean, if I lived in a place that had more population density and I felt like I could attract all the patients to one location, do that. I mean, it's great for. I mean, it simplifies everything. It simplifies overhead. Uh, but if you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to expand your practice and by opening another location, then I think it's worth doing. It's the big part is systems. You need to have good systems for
So,
making sure that everything is in the right place. If you're delivering aligners, do we have the aligners in the right location? And just managing that, and that comes down to having a great staff. I mean, like I said, I'm not making that work happen. It's having the
right.
people that are supporting you who can do that.
And it's great to hear that because the practices that we work with at Ortho Marketing, the ones that are the most successful, the ones that seem to be happiest are the ones with the staff's involved. The staff, kind of runs it there, and you have to have the right team across the board with in any business that you're in, especially when you're in multiple locations like you. But just across the board, as long as your staff is on board and they understand and they're all buying in, that's the a beautiful thing, because so many practices, the number one complaint that I hear from them is the staff, and it's awesome to hear from you that you've got a great team like you do. And
Yeah.
I'm super happy to hear that there. Um, so we're going to jump a little bit now and talk a little bit about technology and adapting. And we're in 2020, it's been a crazy year, and there are a lot of new platforms out there that are being utilized for offices that are game changers. And off the top, virtual orthodontics and appointments on demand is probably leading the charge here as far as orthodontics go, and it's because people don't want to leave their house as much. They don't want to go an office as much as they did before. They don't want to go out. It's a scary thing. So talk a little
hmm
bit about the steps that you've done as far as bringing in new technologies to make the practice more efficient, effective, and to adapt to the times.
Well, one of the things that I was working on even before COVID hit was I had been transitioning to a practice that's about 70 to 80% Invisalign. And that in of itself, just leveraging the technology of having everything being digital, scanning patients at their new patient appointment, that was the groundwork that had to be laid. And that made it such a huge difference when we hit the shutdown and I wasn't able to see my patients for 8 weeks.
Hmm.
Everybody in Invisalign, I knew they were keeping going. And it made it a lot less crazy when we finally were able to open up, because I didn't have just all these people who'd had broken brackets and things like that. So that was the first part. But then when COVID hit, I was like, I don't want to do this again.
Hmm.
And that's when I decided to implement dental monitoring. And it was something I've been looking at for a while, but I have to say I was uncomfortable. I doubted that patients would feel comfortable about having, not coming in to see me. Maybe it was ego, maybe I thought they liked coming in, but I just wasn't sure they would feel if they felt neglected or they weren't getting value. But I realized we all have had just enormous transformation, the idea of telemedicine and virtual medicine, dentistry, all of it. So I just jumped in and said, let's go there, and got on board most of my Invisalign patients and everyone who's started since who's Invisalign. And it's been just a game changer. Patient acceptance has been one of the most exciting things. Patients love it. They don't want to come in and see me. They're not interested in it,
Yeah.
and they do see the value in it. Not only I'm actually giving them superior treatment because I'm able to monitor them on a weekly basis rather than seeing them only every 12 weeks or
Sure.
15 weeks.
And the
And
technology is incredible. I'm using it
oh,
as well. And when we do the scans, it's incredible, the artificial intelligence that they have and how easy it is to use. And their scan box, it tells you what to do. So just you look in the mirror and it says,
oh,
look, turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right, look up, boom, boom, and it's incredible. How
oh
simple
yeah,
it is to use. And you say it's a game changer from both sides. Um,
oh
you know,
yeah.
it makes how much more efficient and effective has it made you as a business,
Oh
as a
well,
practice?
I mean, it's I'm still probably guess I'm getting to about the 6 month mark, and I mean already it's just amazing. The days are I have fewer patients that are coming in, and I'm able to monitor people more closely. So I think where people talk about getting better results, fewer refinements, I'm already seeing how that's going to be happening in the future. And I think just that patients have that contact with you, because not only are they getting the responses that comes from the AI, but there's a messaging function, and patients can just send me, little notes about if they have questions or concerns, and whether I've got my staff who can answer those questions, or if it's something that I need to take care of, I can do that. And I feel like people feel like they can reach out to me, which is a lot harder to do because otherwise they have to call the office and ask questions. Whereas we're all much more comfortable, like basically sending a text, which is what they're able to do.
This podcast is brought to you by Presentation Multimedia. Presentation Multimedia is a full-service digital marketing agency providing website design, social media management, search engine optimization, digital advertising, and more. For more information, visit presentationmultimedia.com.
It's great to see how things are evolving because when I was a kid, my sisters both had braces back in the day, and you know. Maybe dating myself, but when you walk into the orthodontist office back in the 70s, it was wood paneling with the old Saturday Evening Post pictures on the wall, and and it seemed like even though he was probably the doctor was probably early 30s, 40s, he seemed like he was 80 when you were a kid,
Right.
and because everything just seemed old. And now the technologies have changed, and and the platforms have changed, that it really is great, and there's a term that I use all the time on my podcast and in business as well, and it's adapt or die. And you have to do that in business to adapt to new technologies and be able to think out of the box. Otherwise, if you don't do it, somebody else will. So by
Right.
you positioning the practice, as a leader and offering these technologies and offering appointments on demand and orthodontics on demand and braces on or Invisalign on their time versus here we can only come in between these time here and there and see and speak to it. Now you can do it anytime. So it's great that you're adapting to this and being able to do it. What have you heard from your patients as far as this? Have they really been raving as well and saying that I'm sorry, we it's great to see your pretty face, but we don't want to come in, or or what kind of response have you heard from them? um, are they happier, or are they not, or is it just something that it's just part of natural now?
I think part of it it's natural, but I do think, and people get excited about it. I know they're excited just in the new patient exam when I'm able to tell them about the technology. And just like I said, I'm scanning them, I'm showing them what their outcome's going to look like on Invisalign. I'm telling them you may not have to see me for except like every 4 to 6 months.
Hmm.
That's easy to say. Anyone can say yes to that. You can fit that into your life. And I find that makes it really, people just say, hear all this, like, this sounds great. What do I need to do next? So
Right.
and then that's just great for getting, new patients and getting people started. But
Sure.
one of the things is I did have one of my a pediatric dentist who's a good referrer, and she had sent me an email just kind of out of the blue. She's like, she had a patient come in who's in Invisalign doing dental monitoring, and she said that the mom was just raving about it and said, "I don't know how much it costs, but
I
it's
want it.
worth every penny because this mom is so excited and happy about that."
Because think about it, moms, but up before this, they got 2 or 3 kids. They have to be dropping them off at soccer practice, then taking them to the orthodontist, and over to dance class, then back to the orthodontist again. And now you can take orthodontist out of the equation, and and which is something they had to constantly do every 4 or 6 weeks or whatever. My daughter has kind of been following me when on my Invisalign journey when I go and she's been videoing it and and helping out. And she's like, well, when I used to go to the office, I had to go. It seems like I was going every week. It felt like to her,
Right.
And she's like, Dad, you don't have to go back for another 6 months. Yep, that's what Dr. Glazer said. And she's like, wow, it seems like I was there all the time,
And
and
yeah.
it's incredible, how things have changed in, the 10 years or what have you since she had it.
Well, and I think, if you think about with COVID too, and part of it's now people don't want to come in because they're nervous and, there's anxiety around that. But let's go 6 months forward when, hopefully we have a vaccine and life is getting a little bit more normal again. Even more people are not going to come in to see us because everyone's going to want to do all the fun things they have not been able to do for 18 months.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
I mean, I even think it's going to be even more so. They're going to be like, they're going to be all in for, travel soccer, and they're not going to have time to come and see
Sure.
us. So I think it'll be even more valuable when people can do fun things again.
Right. So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking of, going the virtual orthodontic way and using something like dental modeling, what advice would you give to them?
Jump in with both feet.
Just
I
dive
think
right
with
in, huh?
anytime, I mean, do your research, do your due diligence, get to the point you feel like you're comfortable with it, that this is going to add value, that this is something you want to integrate, and then go. I found with anything, it just piecemeal into any of these sorts of technologies, it just adds frustration and you don't get the benefit. So it takes too long to get the benefit and you're going to give up. So you basically just have to, you decide, then you explain to your staff, you got to get the staff on board,
Right.
explain the value to them, let them be in on it, and then just go. And if you do that, there's pain, at any
Sure.
kind of integration. There's probably, month or month and a half of pain, but when you do it, you go full in, then everybody gets up to speed, their skills, you get the skills faster, you're doing it all the time. So you're not going, how did I do that? And then it just becomes routine.
Right. That's great advice. Great advice. So we're going to cut it off now, but I have two final questions for you. Okay.
Okay.
So question number one. All right. The world asteroids hitting Earth tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
What's Leslie Pitner's final meal?
Oh, that's hard. Okay, I'm going with pizza.
God,
I love
nice.
pizza.
There you go. Go right. Okay. All right. And then the next question is, all right, pizza, but then you have to top it off with the final dessert.
Oh man. See, I'm not really a sweets person.
Really? Okay.
So my dessert would be, because this was my other thing I wanted to eat, is chips and guacamole.
Okay.
So that's my
All right.
dessert.
Okay. All right. That works. Great. Terrific. So I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and giving us a little bit of education about you and some of the technologies you're working with and implementing. And give me a little plug. So if somebody wants to talk to you and they're interested in maybe, taking the plunge like you've done, or opening up multiple locations or jumping into new technologies, what's the best way for them to find out about you? How should they, email you or do social media? Like,
Yeah.
what was the best way for them somebody just to learn a little bit more about you?
Email. Well, you probably email. You can feel free to email me. It's lpitner@gmail.com. So it's LPITNER@gmail.com. Check out the website for my practice. It's drpitner.com. I confess I'm not a big social media person, so you won't find me there.
Okay. No, this is great. So, all right. So, Leslie Pitner, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. And now that I know you're a pizza fan, okay, we're going to be doing a slice together soon then. And I'll show you some real pizza because I'm a New Yorker. All right. So, everybody out there, thanks so much for listening. Be safe and keep smiling. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Orthomarketing.com. 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.